I was up late. My anxiety and I were battling all day, and the loneliness of the night just made it stronger. It was about 2 a.m. I was trying to chill in the kitchen eating an apple and some crackers. When I was done, I turned off the lights in the house, double-checked the house was locked up, then went to my room and laid down with my dog. I tried to chill out and watch some YouTube for a while. About an hour later, it's now roughly 3 a.m. and my dog started freaking out. He jumped off the bed and started whining and scratching at door. I figured he might need to go to the bathroom, so I put on his harness and his leash. I do this because my dog gets curious and tries to leave the backyard. The leash is about 15-ish feet long, so he can go to the edge of the yard and poo where he prefers to. As soon as I opened my bedroom door, he ran faster than I've ever seen him run before, tearing the leash from my hands. I ran after him and turned my phone's flash on. He ran out the back door, which was wide open. This obviously was not good considering the fact I had definitely locked it an hour beforehand. I raced to grab the leash before he jumped the fence. I grabbed some good length and wrestled him onto the porch. I held the leash as tight as I could while he was barking and lunging forward to the bushes. They started rustling and I could hear the sound of someone climbing over the chain link fence. I shined my flash in that direction but saw no one. With my voice shaking, I said loud enough for whoever it was to hear, "Who's there?" No response. Short after, I saw a long branch stick out and slap repeatedly on the fence. Then whoever or whatever was holding it dragged it along the fence, making rhythmic pings along the way. I was absolutely frozen. After a moment of silence came a series of CH noises, and whoever it was started to drag the stick up and down the fence faster and faster. Right then and there I knocked the hell out of my backyard and back inside, pulling my now foaming at the mouth dog with me. Locking the door behind me, I ran to my parents' room and told them what happened. They called the police and I gave my statement. From what we can tell, the only thing missing is a single 15-pound dumbbell. I can't help but think what would have happened if I didn't let my dog out of my room last night, or if I had fallen asleep. Needless to say, I hope I never meet the person who tried to rob my house again. Edit. I know this seems like such a tame and mundane story, but being a small 16 years/old girl, it's pretty terrifying. So this isn't one of my paranormal experiences at the local port, but it still creeps me out when I think about it. A lot of spooky shit happens to me for some reason, but that's besides the point. Last year, 2018, was a very busy year for me, meaning that I had little to no time to date or meet any girls. Due to my busy schedule, I decided to make a Tinder account. I have never had any experience with such app or online dating, and I didn't actually plan on meeting up with a random girl to go on a blind date or anything. I just wanted to see what the fuss was about, and if that shit actually worked. So, the app still being something new to me, I matched with this really pretty girl. She seemed short, light-skinned, and had a nice smile. Her account wasn't a catfish or any sort of fake profile. It seemed genuine and legit. Anyway, I know that I didn't actually want to hit it off with any girl in this manner, but she was very hot and I said, fuck it. So I slid into her DMs with a simple, "Hey." A couple of hours went by and we got each other's Snapchat users and phone numbers. We exchanged Snapchat photos. So with that said, there's no way that her Tinder account was a fake. I felt better knowing that for some reason. She said that she lived in the city that was about 25-30 miles north of mine. I had nothing planned for the next day, and neither did she, so we decided to meet up at her house the next day to mess around. The next day came by, and we planned to meet up at around 10:30 p.m. The neighboring city where she was from was about a 30 to 45 minutes drive from my place, so around 10 p.m.ish, I decided to start driving over. As I am driving over, I get a phone call from her telling me to instead go over at a later time. Around midnight, I didn't mind, since I have friends who lived in her city, so I paid them a visit. Meanwhile I waited for her. 11:45 p.m. rolled by and I started to drive to her place. My friends didn't know what I was up to. They just thought I popped in to visit them randomly. So, this girl sent me her address, and at first the address that she had sent me led me to this upper-class suburban neighborhood. I reached the address and it was close to what I would describe as a white mansion. I called her to tell her that I was parked on her driveway, and I asked her to come outside so I could assure myself that I was at the right place. She said, "I don't see you. Are you sure you followed the directions?" Well, to avoid any more fuck-ups, she just sent me her current location through iMessage. At first I found it odd, but I followed the directions to the location anyway. So, midnight rolled by, and I was on my way to her current location, which was actually kind of far from the address that she had originally sent me. As I am driving, The directions are telling me to drive off the path and into a dirt road surrounded by cornfields. This spooked me a little because I was now in the middle of nowhere. I was about 10 minutes away from any civilization. Red flags started to go off in my head, but I ignored them because there is no way that her account could have been a setup. I had seen her pictures on Snapchat, and you can't Photoshop those as far as I am aware. So, after driving through a dark-ass dirt road through the cornfields, the directions led me to a broken down old house. It looked uninhabitable. There were no cars outside, or in the driveway. The only light I saw on was the porch light. I call this girl to tell her that I was outside. She replies with okay, I'll be right out. On a side note, I'm a pretty big dude and I train every day. I'm not intimidated by others, but there are some situations where you're helpless and have no option but to evade for the fear of your life. So, I'm waiting by my car, and then I see this figure come out the front door ... and it was dressed like a fucking nun. Black veil, long black dress, voodoo charms, and she's also holding a fucking voodoo doll on her left hand. I was pretty spooked out, but I thought it was just a prank. I gave it a few seconds for the cameras to pop out, but the person just stood there. I slowly started to realize that this wasn't a prank because a few seconds later, I saw another figure in a similar black outfit peeking out of a door and starting to make a run towards me with a fucking machete. I don't even bother trying to fight back because I knew I was probably going to end up gutted or skinned alive by these psychos. I immediately jumped in the car and floored the fuck out of there. I then heard a gunshot a few seconds later behind me. I'm in my car screaming prayers with tears in my eyes because I was hoping to drive away with my life. Her number then kept calling me as soon as I left. I blocked it, and then another number started to call me, and I blocked it as well. I ended up staying over at my friend's house that night. I explained everything that took place and he wanted to go check it out together with our group of friends, but I was too terrified to even go back there. I called the police, and they went to go check it out, but the place was abandoned by the time they got there. They said that the address has been vacant for years, and they simply made a report out of it. They were never found. The whole thing was a sick setup to begin with. The girl was planning on luring me so they could do God knows what to me. I deleted my Tinder account. I'm pretty sure it works if you're only looking to get laid, but I somehow had the worst luck the first time I ever decided to use it. Don't ever meet a stranger somewhere that isn't public. Shit can always go sideways. This happened on the train only a couple of hours ago. I was on my way back from work, utterly exhausted. The train arrives and I hop on. Usually, I just stand, but after standing all day I felt like I deserved to sit down for 5 minutes until I had to get off and jump on my second train. I sit down on a corner seat facing away from anyone. The only person in my little block of chairs is a guy whose seat is facing directly at me, but that's just normal so I don't pay any attention to it. After the doors close and we get moving, I realize the guy who's facing me starts making these aggressive grunts. He does this 2 or 3 times until he starts to loudly fake cough. I pay literally no attention, not even reacting, which leads him to angrily saying excuse me. At this point, I can't ignore him and I thought I may have just accidentally done something wrong without realizing, so I turn my head around to face him and instantly his tone changes to this little chirpy whining voice. You look just beautiful. I do a short smile and say thank you and then completely turn my head to look out of the window in the opposite direction again. Did you come from heaven? He said in this weird childlike giggly voice. My only response was again just a very short half-assed smile, to not anger him but to give him the hint for him to stop. That's when he leans forward, goes completely blank-faced, stares me directly in the eyes and says deeper, now I think I'm going to go to heaven tonight. At this point, I was totally creeped out and this guy was 6 feet and very broad. I started to feel my pulse rapidly go in my neck, but making sure I showed no sign of fright. After this, he just kept repeating you look beautiful, over and over again, looking me up and down. Mind I literally had on an oversized hoodie and baggy trousers so nothing was visible, which just seemed to make it even worse. He asked me when I was getting off, and I just said the city, which could mean any of 3 that we would pass. He asked me what I was doing tonight, where I lived, and kept giving him vague answers. After I wouldn't tell him where I was getting off, he started to say I'm getting off at insert place, but then 5 seconds later would change it, then ask where this or that place was, trying to see if I would react to any of them. In the end, I stated that I would be meeting my boyfriend. I wasn't, but I could since he was conveniently in the city. This just made him smile. Can I come home with you? I think I must have started to look a bit fidgety as my stop was next and I didn't exactly know what to do. He got up and he stood by the doors. Whilst getting up he smiled and said, "You're going to have a wonderful night." I nearly threw up. We stopped, the buzzer went off, lots of people ended up being behind him so he had no option to open the doors and exit. I waited to the last second and bolted off. He looked back but I was already going around many different corners, going to my next train, which luckily ended up only being in 4 minutes. I don't know who you are or what you were planning, but let's not meet again.